I work nights, not by choice, bills, But I used to tell myself the roads are kinder after midnight. Fewer cars, fewer people, fewer reasons to look anywhere but straight ahead. If you keep moving and keep your mind on the white lines, the night moves with you like a calm, black river. That was before the first streetlight winked out behind me. It was early September, the air cool enough to make the windshield feel like glass to the touch. I'd just finished a delivery run, secondhand office chairs from a storage unit in the city to a dentist's office 2 towns over. The direct route was closed for construction, so I took County 7, one of those long, empty ribbons that passes more pastures than houses and more quiet than anything else. There's a stretch of lights along an old farm road they converted into a straightaway. 8 poles, evenly spaced. I always liked that part. Those lights feel like little checkpoints. You pass one and your brain says, "Good job, there's another up ahead." I crossed under the first and glanced in the rear view out of habit. The way your eyes bounce between mirrors and the dash. The light behind me buzzed white, then gray, then nothing. I actually laughed. Old bulb dying. Fine. I passed under the second pole, checked the mirror again. Dante asked me why, and watched it sputter and smother itself to black, as if I'd de-stolen its breath just by going by. That time, I didn't laugh. My headlights brightened a fraction, like the truck wanted to prove it still had my back. The third light was coming up, a fat little halo in the middle of nothing. The fence on the right looked like black stitches holding the field together. I told myself, don't look. It's a power thing, a grid thing. Some maintenance guy replaced them in the same week 10 years ago, and now they were failing in the same week. Who cares? But when I rolled under the third, I couldn't help it. I looked black, as if something put a hand over the bulb the second I passed. I let my foot off the gas without meaning to. The truck slowed to a crawl, tires making that soft pebbled hiss on the asphalt. The fourth light was ahead, humming gently. I could see a tiny cloud of moths orbiting it. I inched forward, my forehead almost touching the wheel, listening. Somewhere out in the field, a cricket stopped mid-note, like it realized it was the only voice left and felt embarrassed. I crossed under the fourth light and watched it die in the mirror. Cold poured through the vents, even though I hadn't touched the dial. I rolled up my window and felt a static sting jump to my fingertips when the glass closed. That's when the faintest thought, the one people don't admit they have, drifted to the top. What if it's not about the bulbs? What if it's about me? My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I startled and almost swerved. It was a text from my sister, Mara. "You coming by Sunday?" I stared at it hard like a lifeline, typed yeah, then light tapped the gas. My headlights caught the fifth pole and the halo around it. 10 seconds away. 8. 5. I forced myself not to look when I passed it, but peripheral vision is a liar. I saw the flare dim. The reflection in the side mirror carried just enough to show me the halo collapsing like a punctured lung. The road ahead still had 3 lit poles, and beyond them, only the hard shine of my high beams against a curve I couldn't see. The last time I'd driven this late, I'd counted the lights. 1 every 100 yards, perfect spacing. If they were all going dark behind me, I had 300 yards before I was driving a straight tunnel, cut into the earth with a lid on it. I pressed the accelerator. The truck growled, then smoothed. The 6th light loomed, then slid overhead, then failed. A tiny pop echoed. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet it sounded like a knuckle cracking right against my ear. I snuck a glance at the gauge cluster. The voltmeter needle was quivering, just a tremor, like a dog testing the leash. The radio screen had fogged to a faint blue. The station name blinked off, then on, off, then on. Not funny, I said out loud, and then felt stupid for saying it. To who? 7. I took the 7th at 45 miles per hour, then 50, and watched it die like the rest. There was only the 8th left, the very last light on that straightaway, a silver coin at the end of a hallway. I had the sudden, childish urge to stop under it and sit there as if it was a porch light, and I'd finally made it home. Something else stopped me. A shape stood in the road, just past the 8th light. Not in my lane, but just beyond the halo where the darkness thickened, like it was patient and didn't want to take a step into the light until I came close enough to deserve the introduction. My brain tried to cast it as a mailbox, a signpost, a lopsided bush, but the shape was vertical, shoulders ignoring the wind, and there was the faint suggestion of a face without features, more absence than presence. I kept going. What else was I supposed to do? I told myself it's a trick of reflection. Headlight bounce can make you think a fence post is a person. It's a known thing. There's a term for that. Pareidolia. Yes, that's it. My mind scratching for any facts that felt like handholds. When I crossed beneath the 8th light, I screwed my eyes forward and did not look in any mirror. I didn't have to. The light made its small, obedient pop and went out. My truck had no halo now. It became the halo. The shape wasn't there anymore. Not ahead. I didn't know it had moved until I felt the smallest weight settle onto the bed of the truck, like a bird you can barely hear landing on a windowsill. I say felt, but that makes it sound big. It wasn't. It was barely a pressure, the tiniest dip of suspension, but the truck knew, and I knew. And if you've ever been absolutely certain you were not alone when you were supposed to be, then you know the way certainty can freeze into your blood in a single perfect second. I told myself it was wind. I told myself it was nothing. The phone in the cup holder buzzed again. Mara, bring the stepladder if you still have it. I typed without taking my eyes off the road. Why? And the phone screen dimmed, then dimmed again. It was on battery, full charge. I'd seen the green icon when I started the truck. Now the percentage ticked down. 100, 98, 96. I dropped it like it burned me. The white lines left and right narrowed as if the road was being cinched by invisible hands. I said, no, because hearing my voice felt like proof of my life, I guess. No, no. The truck cab had the pressure of a closed airplane. My ears popped. The radio whispered expressway static. Somewhere in the mess I thought I heard words I knew, then realized it was my own name. Too soft to verify. I kept my speed at 55. I didn't dare slam the gas and spin out. My hands on the wheel were steady because once you let your fear go to your fingers, they'll never listen to you again. After a mile, the world decided to be normal again. The road curved, and I saw the sleepy shapes of a barn and a silo. A blue reflector marker winked on a mailbox. There was a house down the slope with a single golden window. I breathed out a laugh that sounded like it wanted to be a sob. The weight in the bed shifted, just a fraction, as if whatever was back there braced to see the view. I said, "You need a ride somewhere?" It came out half joke, half prayer. No answer, of course. I wasn't expecting one. The weight shifted again, right over the spot where my toolbox was bolted. A plan formed, dumb and simple. get to the all-night diner at Crossroads, park beneath their floodlights, act like a person who has just escorted a mobile shadow down a stretch of county road, call someone, anyone. The truck might stall. Okay, the phone might die. Fine. People would be at the diner. Eyes, witnesses, coffee. I drove. The lines widened. The map in my head marched. One more right bend, a little hill, the low bridge with graffiti, then the Exxon, then the diner. When I reached the bridge, my headlights caught the steel ribs and made a tunnel of silver bones. I eased off the gas so the tires wouldn't squeal. The bridge has a camera for speeders. I didn't want a ticket to be the biggest embarrassment of the night. Halfway through, water drummed somewhere under us, louder than it should have been. I imagined something in the bed, leaning over the wall, listening. On the other side of the bridge, there's a single pole light the county stuck there after a fatal during a winter storm. The only light between the farm stretch and Crossroads. The bulb ahead was yellowish and weak, like a tired eye. When I reached it, it didn't go out. I felt a gratitude so hard, I almost said thank you to a piece of glass and gas. Then, because I'm slow, it occurred to me. The other lights had gone out when I passed under them. This one held steady. That meant one of two things. Whatever was wrong wasn't wrong anymore. Or the light wasn't T reacting to me anymore, because I wasn't T the thing making them fail, because the thing making them fail was behind me now. I looked in the mirror. I couldn't help it. At first, all I saw was the glow of my own tailgate and the empty road laying itself flat. Then, my brake lights bounced off something darker than the dark right at the lip of the bed. No shape, no face, no edges I could swear to, only a difference. The way you know, there's a door in a wall by the seam. The difference lifted a little, as if it had realized I was looking. I snapped my eyes forward and kept driving. The Exxon sign rose like a blue moon over the hill. I could make out the red letters of open in the store window and the neon diner beyond. A guy in a baseball cap leaned over the hood of his sedan at the pump. There were people. I wanted to honk. I wanted to flash my lights and roll down the window and say, "Do you see anything in my truck? Do you hear anything? Do you smell anything cold?" I turned on my signal, even though there wasn't another car in sight. The tick of it sounded like a metronome measuring my pulse. I pulled into the lot and parked under the biggest halide flood they had. The light oversaturated the world. The white of my truck nearly glowed. The black top showed every grain. I put the truck in park, shoved the shifter so hard it clacked, and then I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to figure out what normal people did. The guy at the pump glanced over once, twice. I raised a hand and gave a small wave like nothing in my life was wrong, and stepped out. The cold hit me. Not air cold. A lack. The way a refrigerator feels when it's been open too long. I walked to the back. My toolbox looked undisturbed. The bed had nothing in it but leaves that had followed me since August, and a thin layer of dust I never got around to washing. I ran my fingers over the dust. My hand left a streak. Next to it, not interrupting it, not crossing it. Nothing. No imprint, no prints at all except mine. That would have calmed me if it weren't for one detail. The dust had piled in a tiny crescent in the corner closest to the cab, as if something had been sitting there. And when I braked to stop, the dust had slid, blocked by a weight that didn't permit it to go any farther. I closed the tailgate calmly because I was being watched by a man at pump 4 and the girl behind the glass register. I forced my shoulders to align with a human rhythm. People notice when someone moves like a puppet. Inside the diner, the coffee smelled like comfort and burnt toast. I picked a booth by the window so I could see the truck and forced down 2 cups without tasting them. The waitress, early 20s, a tattoo of a sparrow on her wrist, asked if I wanted anything else. I said, "What's the brightest table you have?" and immediately wished I'd said anything else. But she only smiled and tapped the light fixture above my head with a knuckle. "My dad installed these," she said. "They'll tan you if you sit long enough." "Good," I said, and realized how it sounded. "I've been out on County 7. Lights are acting funny." She grimaced. "I hate that stretch." "You heard of them going out as you pass, like in a chain," she thought. Maybe when a transformer's being dumb, my dad would know. The bell over the door jingled. The guy from Pump 4 came in, took a seat at the counter, and ordered a slice of pie. He glanced at me once, a little too brief, a little too careful. The way you glance toward a dog you aren't sure is friendly. I told myself, sit, eat, make a plan. Wait an hour and call someone to follow you home. Or leave the truck and walk. My phone was still draining, but the diner's brightness bullied it into behaving. It clung at 87%. Mara had sent a smiley face. I texted, "Running late. Love you." The typing dots appeared, then stopped, then appeared again, as if the message had to push through something thick. I stayed 40 minutes. People came and went. No one sat near me. That could have been chance. Could have been the way my face looked. When I stood to pay, the waitress said, "Do you need me to call someone? You look like you saw a deer." No, thanks." Outside, the floodlight burned my pupils down to pins. I approached the truck the way you approach a sleeping thing. I opened the door, slid in, started the engine. The radio spat soft static again. It hadn't done that inside the diner light. The voltmeter needle trembled. I put the truck in drive and pulled onto the road. As soon as I cleared the floodlight circle, the night closed like a fist. The weight returned to the bed. No slow easing this time, no argument. It was just there, exact and inevitable, like a word you can't unsay. I didn't check the mirror. I didn't speak. The road home was 12 minutes. If I made it to my street, I'd be able to pull into my driveway and aim the car at the garage, wall off every corner with light, bolt the deadlock, go upstairs, pretend the creaks were old house, pretend the chill was weather. My neighborhood isn't fancy, but for some reason, the county splurged on reflective street markers at every corner. They winked at me like eyes as I passed. I used to like that. It made the place feel looked after. Now, each wink felt like a countdown. I didn't take County 7 back. I took the longer route through town, past the feed store and the high school and the municipal building with its flag lit from below. I thought, city light, human light, not the county's fickle bulbs. Smart. Except the town was different at 3:20 in the morning. The light was there, plenty of it, but it felt thin, like someone had diluted it. My headlamps made a tunnel and the streetlights became stars crushed flat against glass. Signs bled color. The courthouse clock read 3:20, then 3:21, then 3:20 again. I looked harder. It read 3:20 always, like a photograph. I passed a patrol car idling near the park. The officer inside didn't look up. I thought about stopping, about saying something I couldn't de-explain, and asking for help I didn't know how to trust. But I didn't. I kept going. I At the four-way where the pharmacy sits, there's a lamp that always flickers. Everyone in town knows it. Kids make dares about it. Tonight it didn't flicker. It burned steady, a quiet white. Cars were parked along the curb, alone and sleeping. A stray dog trotted across the crosswalk between the white lines like a good citizen. When it reached the sidewalk near me, it paused, lifted its head, and stared at the bed of my truck. Its ears went flat. It made a sound I've never heard a dog make. A small, breathy whine like a violin string sawed too slow. Then it ran. I turned down Maple. My house was 5 blocks. The porch light, ID left it on by habit, glowed at the end of the street like a promise I'd mailed to myself hours earlier. I pressed the gas. The truck's engine responded like a throat clearing before a speech. 4 blocks. The weight in the bed shifted again, forward this time, toward the cab. There is a thin slit behind the seats where the rear window can slide open for air. I have never used it. I thought of that slit now the way swimmers think of the dark water under a pier. 3 blocks. The porch light at my house flickered. No, not flickered. Dimmed, then returned, as if it was arguing with someone. 2 blocks. Something inside the cab clicked. The slider behind my head, the one I never used, moved half an inch. The sound was so precise, so domestic, so harmless, that I almost convinced myself it was settling plastic from a temperature change. Then it moved another half inch. I felt the air change. It wasn't colder. It was emptier. The way air feels when you open a window in a room you didn't know was sealed. 1 block. The porch light at my house went out. I stopped at the curb in front of my driveway and left the engine running. I didn't put it in park. I wanted momentum to be a decision I could still make. My neighbor across the street leaves his living room light on for his cat. It was off now. The whole block looked like a photograph developed wrong. The slider behind my head whispered another inch. "Don't," I said. "Please." The voice that answered me was not loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a growl or a hiss. It was my own voice, right behind my ear, shaped with my throat and my cadence, softened by the gap in the glass, so it sounded as if it lived there. It said, "You turned the lights off." Every hair along my arms lifted. I didn't turn around. I looked ahead at my house and saw the faintest shape if I squinted. The picture frame in the front hallway. The one with me and Mara and our mom. White dresses and sunburned cheeks. It was a detail only I would know from this distance. That meant the porch light hadn't failed completely. It had only been dimmed. "You turned the lights off," the voice repeated, almost curious, almost kind, like it wanted me to know it was impressed. "You did it one at a time. You did it when you passed. You do it whenever you pass." "No," I said. "I don't." "You do." My voice from behind the seat, not just on the road. I realized then that the emptiness I'd felt all night wasn't just cold or space. It was absence. Every place I left felt quiet in a way that had weight. The gas station attendants didn't come out. The waitress didn't look out the window after I left. The officer at the park didn't see me. It was as if something had been practicing on me for a long time, and tonight it was ready to show me what we'd learned. I kept my eyes on my house and slowly pushed the gear shift into park. The truck settled. I reached forward and flicked my high beams on and off twice, a signal Mara and I used to do as kids to say goodnight across the street when we were staying with cousins. It was a stupid reflex. My high beams painted the driveway hard and white, then softer, The porch light stayed dead. Behind me, the slider finished its journey. The opening was small, 3 inches maybe, but the cab felt like it had been opened to a cave mouth. My breath fogged in the air and then didn't. The voice leaned forward. I could hear the shape of my molars in it. "Get out," it said gently. "Turn around. We'll walk to the door. If you hurry, you can turn the light back on before it notices us. If you don't hurry," a pause, a smile inside the words. "Well, you know how it goes when someone forgets the lights." "I won't go in," I said. "I'll stay here until morning." Morning. The way it said the word made me think of a hand testing the grain of wood to see which way it runs. You don't know morning anymore. You carry night with you now. You learned the road's trick. I reached for my phone. It lit and showed 61%. I tapped Mara's name. The call button pressed, but the ring didn't start. The bar that should have filled with green stayed blank, not failing, waiting. "You can call them," the voice said. "You can tell them you're outside. You can tell them to turn the porch light on. They will try. They will flip the switch. They will say, 'It's on. I swear it's on.' You will tell them it's not. Isn't that funny? Isn't that like walking past a light and hearing it die?" "Why me?" I whispered. The voice leaned so close, I felt the warmth of something that wasn't warm. "Because you noticed," it said. "Because you always look back to check. A small, stupid thing saved me. Not bravery, not logic, habit. My sister has a spare key beneath the 3rd brick on the left of her front steps, because I nagged her to hide one. I knew she'd nag me if I didn't have one too. She'd tuck one beneath my porch, because that's who we are. Annoying, careful. 2 kids of a woman who never forgot a grocery list or a seatbelt. I didn't have to go into the house. I didn't have to turn the light on. I had to get the key. I turned the engine off and the night sighed against the windows like a crowd exhaling. I opened the door and stepped out. The air wasn't colder exactly. It was thinner, a mine shaft at the end of a tunnel where sound goes to practice being an echo. I didn't shut the door. I left it open. Light from the dash spilled onto the street, like someone had tipped a pitcher of green over the asphalt. I told myself that counted for something. I walked to my porch. The boards creaked the same way they always creaked, as if my house had bones and it liked me enough to complain. I knelt and slid my hand under the 3rd board. Splinters, a nail, the cool metal of a key ring. Behind me, something leaned against the truck bed, patient. I stood, key in my palm. I didn't go to the door. I walked to the fuse box on the side of the house instead. When I flipped the main breaker, my porch light should have died even if it had been on. It did nothing. It stayed exactly as it was, a dead eye pretending to be a lid. I flipped the breaker back and every other house on the block rippled with a faint, reluctant shimmer. TVs in living rooms no one was in, a bedroom lamp behind a shade, lights that didn't want to commit to the idea of illumination in my presence. I stood there, hand on the box, and understood something simple and horrible. This wasn't about power. It was about permission. My permission. The thing in my truck had told me as much. I turned the lights off. Everywhere I went, I left switches flipped toward night. I walked back to the curb with the key in my fist. I didn't go to the truck. I didn't look at it. I crossed the street to my neighbor, S house, the one with the always-on light for the cat, and I climbed the steps. I know his porch creaks too. I've brought him his mail when it was misdelivered. The window beside the door held the faintest blue. like the afterimage of a dream. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked harder. A light flickered in the hall. The dark resisted, then let go. The chain slid. My neighbor, gray robe, fuzzy socks, hair mashed on one side, peered through the crack. "Everything okay?" he asked, groggy but solidly there in a way that felt like medicine. I could have cried from how ordinary he was. Can you just flip your porch light on?" I asked, just for a second. He frowned. "It's on, bud." He pushed the door wider. Behind him, the hall light was now steady. It made the tiny gilt frame on his wall glare. I looked past him at the porch. The bulb above us was dark. I smiled anyway and lied. "Thanks. Sorry to wake you." "You good?" "Yeah. Car trouble. Needed to see." He shrugged, a human gesture that knocked something loose in my chest, and closed the door. The chain slid back. I stood there breathing. Across the street, the open driver's door of my truck glowed weakly. The weight in the bed hadn't shifted. It was content. It had time. So did I. If I couldn't turn a light on by asking it to be on, maybe I could do the opposite. I walked down the steps into my neighbor's yard and stood under his bird bath, where a tiny solar lamp on a stake glowed like a helpful firefly. I lifted my foot and crushed the lamp under my sneaker. Darkness swallowed the patch of grass. I waited. Nothing else went out. The porch light didn't dim further. It had nowhere to go. The night didn't creep closer. The weight in my truck didn't move. I took a breath and tried a different experiment. I pulled out my phone, opened the flashlight app, and held my thumb over the screen. The LED beam cut a white cone through the air. For 1 second, it was strong. For 2 seconds, it faltered. On 3, it died. The app showed it still on. The light just refused. I turned the app off. I stood very still and listened to my own breathing, and the highway far off, and the way night hums. "Okay," I said, "you win." From the truck bed, the softest shift of weight. "Good," my voice said, "but we're making a rule." Silence, interested. "You don't come inside," I said. "You don't cross a real threshold. Porches are nothing. Yards are nothing. Trucks are nothing. Houses are something. The door is something. I won't ask the lights to come on inside. I won't even flip them. I'll use the dark. But you stay out." Another silence. Then a chuckle that could have been my own if it had ever learned to be patient. "Rules are for places with lights," the voice said. "You don't live there anymore." "Maybe not," I said. "But I live with people who do." I crossed the street back to my house and made myself go still in the center of the driveway, right beneath nothing. I turned slowly and looked at the truck. I finally looked. There wasn't a shape. There wasn't a face. There was only a wrong density right where the bed met the cab. It had edges only because the eye insists on edges. It wasn't purple black or midnight blue or any color you can say. It was a subtraction in the form of a seat. "I'm going inside," I told it. "You can wait." It didn't answer. It didn't need to. I went up my steps, unlocked my door by feel, and stood in my foyer with darkness like velvet pressed to my eyes. My hands knew where the table was. My shoulder knew the distance to the wall. I closed the door. I didn't turn the lock. The deadbolt would click. The click would feel like a taunt. I sat on the stairs and listened to my house remember me. It's strange, the way a space talks when you let it. The fridge muttered a little, proud of its own motor. The air vent rattled once, then settled, like a cough from an old man. Somewhere pipes thunked, and then forgot what they had to say. These sounds had always been under everything else. Tonight, they were all there was, and it was enough to keep me anchored. My phone glowed. Mara again. You okay? I'm up. Can't sleep. I typed, yeah. Long night. She sent a heart. I stared at that small shape until it floated a little. I didn't sleep. I waited. The darkness in the foyer pressed its face to mine like a kid at a window. I let it. Minutes piled. An hour. Another. Somewhere between 3 and 4, the birds thought about singing and then changed their minds. When the room began to gray, not with light, but with the idea of light, I stood and opened the door. My truck sat the way I left it, door still open, dash still glimmering weakly green. The porch light remained dead, but the sky had gone from ink to washed felt. The bed of the truck was empty, not clean, empty. The dust patterns were wrong, like someone had blown very softly and erased only what made a shape. I stepped outside fully, toes on the top stair, and the air felt different. Not warm, not safe, just full again. The streetlight at the corner hummed and, in the dim way those bulbs do, made itself modestly known. The lamp that never flickered near the pharmacy would flicker again for the school kids that night. The courthouse clock would tick, like it always had, and mean it. I drove to work that evening because bills still exist, and I took County 7 because I am the sort of person who hates letting fear pick my route. The 8 lights along the straightaway stood with halos like crowns. I drove under the first and didn't look back. I drove under the second and didn't look back. At the third, I almost caved and glanced up at the mirror. I didn't. All 8 remained, and the road felt like a song you only now realize you've been humming to yourself for years. Sometimes, late, a light will still go out when I pass. Not often. More than never. I don't check the mirror and I don't speed up. I keep my hands steady on the wheel. I keep my eyes forward. And I talk just to fill the cab with life, telling no one stories about better bulbs and old roads, and how my sister finally bought a new ladder. If something rides along in the bed, it doesn't complain. It just listens. And I get where I'm going.